Hello and welcome to Nature's Connections. In this program, we're going to be showing you the ecosystem of a northeastern coastal forest, starting with the soil, the plants that grow within the soil, then working our way to the trees, and then to the animals that live throughout the ecosystem. We hope you enjoyed this program. In this forest, we start with gravel deposits that are a common geological feature, being formed as a result of the weathering and erosion of rocks. In locales where gravelly soil is predominant, plant life is generally more sparse. This outcome derives from the inferior ability of gravels to retain moisture, as well as the corresponding scarcity of mineral nutrients. This soil is excellent for ants to make their hives, as can be seen here from their handiwork by this little ant mound. Streams have cut many meters deep within these gravel deposits over hundreds of seasons, exposing these clay layers at the bottom that are about 12,000 years old, left over from the glacial melting and depositing, which was once the bottom of a marine bay. Here, a dried out stream bed from long ago being reclaimed by the forest. The geological action of down-cutting and cross-cutting through stream action has come to shape the land on which this forest grows upon. This goldenrod plant predominantly grows in wide open areas, but has no trouble taking up residence on this forest's edge. Here, a large patch of Comptonia, or sweet fern as it is commonly known, tends to grow on this patch of sandy dry soil, associated with stands of pine trees. It is a shrub that loses its leaves in the fall. Growing to a height of about 3 feet, its leaves when crushed give off a sweet odor. Several fossil species once existing, laying testament to having a much wider distribution throughout the northern hemisphere of the Americas. And here, a winterberry bush with its ripe and bright red berries. This species particularly likes to grow in wetland habitats, but also can be found on dry sand dunes and grasslands, its berries being an important food source for many species of birds, its berries being once used also by the Native Americans for medicinal use. The very well-known raspberry plant and also the blackberry plant grow in abundance throughout this forest, producing tasty berries for the picking in the late summer season. Many species of fern inhabit the forest floor of this coastal Maine forest, growing just about anywhere they can gain a foothold. Large patches of ferns may spread over large areas within the forest and start to brown in color late in the summer, such as these bracken ferns. Also, large stands of poison ivy can be found growing within the forest, seen here with their color changing into a yellow late in this summer season. Poison ivy grows throughout much of North America, including the Canadian Maritimes, and also the mountainous areas of Mexico up to elevations of 15,000 feet, with the ability to grow in a wide variety of soil types and soil pH, but does not grow in desert or arid environments, and also having the ability to grow in areas with seasonal flooding and brackish water. And last but most importantly, those who are allergic are well aware as not to get into any contact with its poisonous sap, leading to painful consequences. This plant, being the Gualtheria genus of plants, are characteristic of producing oil of wintergreen, a yellowish fluid that has a woody sweet odor, being used medicinally for a wide range of discomforts. An ounce of the oil is equal to about 171 aspirin tablets. These miniature vines that are hugging the ground, scientific name Michella repens, commonly called partridge berry, are edible, as well as their bright red-colored berries. They can be found throughout this deciduous coniferous forest. Its roundish leaves with a light-colored midrib aid in its identification. This easily recognizable plant, being clover, has a distribution all over the world. Clover is a food source for some species of moth and butterfly caterpillars. In this acidic soil in which it grows, it is short-lived based on the soil having an unbalanced nutrient supply which it uptakes, also coupled with insect pests and disease. Fault Solomon seals, which tend to grow along coastal wooded habitats in North America up to elevations of 7,000 feet, can be found in deeply moistened soils near streams, such as in this location. The Native Americans use this plant for sunburns, a cough suppressant, and for hyperactive children. Here, this plant's fruit has ripened, as it commonly does in late summer. These spotted touch-me-nots, as they are called, are an annual plant native to North America, being common in soils of bottomlands, ditches, and along streams. Its seeds explode out of its pod if slightly touched when ripe, hence where the plant's name comes from. This fern with a bird dropping on its frond is a perfect example of fertilization and recycling within the forest ecosystem, benefiting both plant and the ecosystem as a whole. A rubber fly sits and waits on an exposed conifer root ready to attack, using its strong proboscis to stab and inject victims with its saliva containing a toxic enzyme that paralyzes and digests its victims' insides. From there, the fly then sucks the liquefied meal through its proboscis like a straw, uptaking its contents. Adult rubber flies will attack almost any other type of insect, and have been known to attack the largest of dragonflies that have many more times the body size compared to the fly. Its family, which contains 7,100 known species worldwide in distribution. This slug, found crawling along with a soft, slimy body, is prone to drying out, so it is confined to the moist environments and must retreat to damp hiding places when the weather is dry, such as this moist and shaded forest floor. Like shelled snails, slugs move in rhythmic waves of muscular contraction on the underside of its body, and at the same time secreting a layer of mucus on which it moves forward, which helps prevent damage to its tissues. Slugs feed on mushrooms, and damage to this mushroom can be seen clearly. With the humidity of summer in the forest, living things grow off of decaying matter on the forest floor. These living things are the mushrooms. Mushrooms are fungi. Fungi are multicellular organisms with complex cells and related to yeasts and molds. The mushrooms that you may come across produce the fruiting body part with the remainder of the organism underground, having a stem with a cap on top lined with gills underneath the cap, where the spores are produced and set free when the time is right to ensure future generations will land elsewhere and grow to perpetuate the species. There are 14,000 species described, and here we see this rotting log that is covered with them. Many species of mushroom can be very colorful and therefore can be discovered quite easily when hiking through a forest. This small round white object is commonly known as a puffball. It is a mushroom with the most notable feature of not having an open cap with spore-bearing gills. Its spores are produced inside its body. When its spores are mature, a mass of them form in the center of its body. Eventually it dries, becoming brittle, and develops an opening for the pores to be set free into the wind, landing elsewhere on the forest floor, and the cycle starts anew. Upon first look at this plant, it would seem to be some kind of mushroom, but it is a plant that is generally scarce in occurrence and does not contain any chlorophyll. So therefore, it has a white appearance. It does not get any energy from sunlight. It is parasitic and has a symbiotic relationship with fungi, and is commonly known as the Indian pipe plant. A very large and old tree has fallen over with age and is in the process of decay. Covered with moss, it supports a new community as opposed to when it was standing, as it slowly gets recycled back into the soil. There are almost as many trees that have fallen than there are standing littered everywhere in this forest, making it more ecologically diversified with its naturally occurring cycles of change. Fallen debris lies everywhere in every forest, but in this forest the debris gives it sections of a beautiful deep green. And here, a small starflower plant has grown out of the carpet of green on a dead limb. The starflower plant is named for its star-shaped flowers, each with 7 petals that grow on stalks above its leaves, blooming between the months of May and June. A small tree has died and fallen over the stream, more scenes of constant change that happen within this forest. Closer examination of this tree, with its green carpet of moss almost growing over its entire surface, reveals tiny stalks, each containing spores that when ready will burst open and be carried upon the wind, just as the spores of mushrooms, to ensure the future generations will grow elsewhere and perpetuate their species as well. There are 12,000 known species of mosses worldwide, preferring damp and shady locations in which to grow. They do not produce flowers or any types of pollen or seeds, but again, as mentioned earlier, always reproduce by producing spores, and they definitely produce a lot of them, as shown in their prolific carpeting of the forest floor and elsewhere where they can gain a foothold for themselves, to live and to grow. This small plant that looks like a baby pine tree is not a conifer, but in a plant division known as lycopods. It's more closely related to mosses and liverworts. It reproduces by producing spores, as do mosses that are also carried onto the wind to propagate the species. Lycopods have been around for more than 400 million years, as recorded in the fossil record, and were as tall as today's trees. A chemical that has been extracted from a club moss that occurs in China is being investigated for the possible treatment of Alzheimer's disease. This plant, that looks somewhat like having strands of hair, like on an animal's tail, is called the horsetail plant. It reproduces by producing spores like the lycopods and mosses, so therefore is more closely related to them than pollen-producing plants.